keep it very, very brief. I mean, most of the stuff is already been said, so I don't have to repeat what others said more competently. So first of all, I mean, I'm also very fascinated by this model. And I think an important difference to the NK is that this model is actually a truly agent-based model. Right? I mean, the NK is not really agent-based. We have agents, but they really do not interact. And here, I mean, the entire model is about how the agents' interactions actually create fitness values endogenously. And I think that's a huge difference. So I'm really fascinated by this. And I mean, also your presentation already started to drill down into many of the organizational implications that this model might have. So I'm not going to repeat this. And I think one of the things, and that is also what Luigi mentioned, what we need to think about a little bit is, okay, what is actually the core in the cloud, right? I had a hard time mapping that onto, for example, those are different market segments and so on, because I mean, there's something that is very, very different about this core cloud setup in the model as compared to what we know about markets and organizations. So I think one has to think very carefully about what the relationship here is. And also I think another attraction of the model, especially for folks that are interested in innovation management, is that it might help us understand much, much better what the conditions are for disruptive innovation, for a punctuated equilibrium, right? Because that's very much about also the setup of agents that you have in the current population and what their fitness values is and what kind of new relationships you are getting, right? And one of the predictions that you also have in your slide is that essentially what you need are destabilizers that kind of like break in the doors, but they then die and they simply open up the markets for somebody else to come in. And I don't think that I think that's a nice idea, a nice prediction of the model, but when we think about the empirics of disruptive innovation, there seems to be differences compared to that, right? I think very often the disruptor actually benefits tremendously from substituting the old dominant design. So there might be subtle differences, but the cool thing is that we can actually talk about these things, right? And ask, okay, under what conditions can we actually start to displace somebody, and what are some of the requirements? Also, I think one of the big predictions that we all keep coming back to, and I think you also just mentioned it, is that you have increasingly longer spells of organizational or system inertia, right? And that completely goes against what we know from economic development, right? I think when we think about economic development, it kind of seems to be the other way around, right? That we have an increasing pace of technological change. So if you compare, I don't know, the year 1000 to the year 1500, there's definitely some changes. But if you compare the 1870 to 1930, there's, I mean, much more radical changes during that period.
Can I comment on that very short?
Yeah, sure.
That's a very interesting point because we've been thinking about that as well. So it's a very important point. And my comment is the following. Time in this model is measured in generations.
Right.
So that is how long, so the number of queries it takes to kill off the entire population. So that is why time as we measure in history is just by our clock. That's a very different thing. So if you have a population of 1 million and a population of 1 billion, then you have the time scale is a factor of 1,000. Slower in this measure when you have 1 billion. So basically, it could be that if you measure time the same way as doing this model, innovation, the rate of innovation will be decreasing and not increasing.
Nice point, yes. Yeah, got it.
But a generation is not how many people are alive, it is, you know, the synthetic answer would be bring sex back in. If you've had recombination, then the sort of the rich soup accumulating might potentially kind of amplify some of these dynamics.
Well, I don't know.
But I think that's an interesting question, right?
It's an interesting question.
So, and that's it. That's all I have. I mean, we are nearly up 5 o'clock. I'm in German, so we should stop on time.
I think there's time for one question. Yeah.
So, I like that at the beginning you have this slide saying the models model. something like that. Yeah? But I feel that something was missing there, and it's behavior and plausibility. Yeah? So that the assumptions reflect something about what we are modeling. And here what I'm missing, or I need help here. Yeah? So I cannot understand what is H in the context of organizations. Yeah? Your fitness function has an exclusive OR inside. Yeah? That's what I understand with O with the underline. Yeah?
The exclusive OR comes in just as a technical detail. Maybe
Yes,
shouldn't have included in the slide, but the exclusive OR just is a trick in order to calculate this J.
Sure. Yeah, but the exclusive OR, what it's doing, it is rewarding diversity. Yeah, but there are cases where you don't want diversity. Yeah, so in models, yeah, like basic hoteling models, what you want is to be the same as the other. Yeah. So some characteristics of organizations I don't see captured in H. And the other is, what is the probability of reproduction? What do we mean by reproduction in this context? So if there's a decrease, there's less munificence in the environment and then it increases, like you have in one analysis, hey, someone will remember what happened in the previous setting and then they will just jump to that state. Yeah? There's no, I think it is too, this is not modeling organizations. Yeah? Organizations are a little bit more rational. So that's a why is this about organizations? Yeah?
Well, again, this is something that I hope that if I'm telling you about the model, that you guys will help to think about with more detail. The thing about what is population, I'm trying to think about, like if you, this kind of new end term somehow involves the amount of resources that are available. So your ability to exploit the available resources, is measured by your population somehow. If you have a large population in the system is doing a good job of living while feeling the same environmental kind of constraints. So somehow, if you want to think about like UN as something like the available demand or the available resources, every species consumes a certain amount of that, and that's represented by the population. This is something I'm sort of vaguely thinking of. Again, but to your main
But
point.
organizations do not reproduce. Yeah, they plan and they act. Yeah, there's no. It is too boundedly irrational.
But wait a second, because it's true, of course, what you're saying, that organization is not reproduced, but you can think of this model in a slightly different way. So you don't think of, say, species in terms of organization, but say cultural ways of doing things. You could have different organizations that, whatever, make cars.
But then this is a model of fashions. Yeah, it's not about firms. It's more about individuals that are copying the way others do, or something like that.
Maybe also fashion, but it's especially in the version where it could be Axel again. It's about cultural
I
development.
think a cultural evolution means.
Cultural evolution.
Don't trivialize the fashion. Is the
Yeah.
way to do it.
But fashion is part of our culture, but maybe not the most important thing, perhaps. But, so that's the way. So I think you're right that if you try to interpret this in terms of organizations, then I would think that you're perfectly right. But the way at least that we think about it is slightly different. And then of course it is possible that one can develop this model so you can make into a model of organizations. But that I don't have any input about. But so I agree.